Hi guys, it's Akira. What's going on? So listen, I got some things to say.
She knows exactly what she wants, and she knows exactly what she deserves, and it makes them boys nervous.
So before we get into it, please make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. Please also make sure that you like, comment, share this video. My prayer is that it'll be helpful. That's what I'll say. I want it to be helpful. My prayer is that it'll be helpful, that it might change some people's perspective on some things, and just that whole shebang bang. So listen, I do not like to call myself someone who grew up in church, but I've been around church people my whole life. My great grandmothers were both heavily in church. My grandmother on my one side is heavy in church. As I got older, my dad was. My mom really has never been her thing, but church has always just been a part of my life in some way, shape, or form, but not consistently until I became an adult and I made the decision to start going to church on my own. And I love church. I love the idea of family. I love the idea of community. I love that we are united under this one idea that God is the end all be all, and we rock with that. I love that. But over the years, things have happened to where I understand why there are people who leave the church. And I understand why people have a hesitation for church. Growing up, I had a very skewed idea of what a quote-unquote believer was because of the people that I was around and that I was raised by and their perception. And I think, having empathy in those moments is really important, because I don't know what those people saw to make them think that this was appropriate and then turn around and show me these things and teach me these things. So I have empathy. I understand, like, everyone's story is different, and I don't want to tell anyone else's story. I just want to tell my story. But over the years, I have been exposed to a lot. I've seen a lot. I've had people drag my name. I have done things to put myself in positions to be dragged. Sidebar, self-accountability is really important. I know I have put myself in certain situations that I deserve to be dragged for because I was being trashed in those situations. And there's no excuse for it. It just is what it is. But there were also situations where genuinely my hands were clean and people just still saw fit to drag me. And when you think about it, of all the places on the planet, church is the last place you would think things like that would happen. Well, actually, nowadays, it's pretty common to think that it would happen there, but you don't want to believe something like that would happen there. You know what I'm saying? We have gone so far away from God's original idea of the church. Church has become a business. And I get it. One thing I hear a lot is it takes money to do ministry, which I wholeheartedly agree with. I'm a ministry leader. Dresses ain't cheap. Material ain't cheap. Flags ain't cheap. Dance shoes ain't cheap. Like, I get it. It does take money to do ministry. But there are things that happen on the back end that I don't even know why I went there. Look, over the years, there have been things that have happened in church, and I'm not singling out any one church, because I think all of us have stories to where things that have happened in church. But for me, the biggest, the streamline thing that has always stuck out to me as to why I have had issues in church is distrust. I have not always felt like I could trust the people who I should have been able to look up to. Now, when I say that, I'm not automatically going to the pastor. I'm not automatically going to, no, that's not what I'm saying. And it's not always the pastor. Sometimes it's the people around the pastor. Sometimes it's leaders in other ministries. Sometimes the person isn't a leader, but because they have so much social influence, they might as well be leading something. The idea of church, well, at least for me, I've always thought of church as somewhere where, like, I go to get better. One of my original reasons for wanting to go to church Eventually, because I actually started wanting to go to church on trash. But eventually I got to a place where I wanted to be whole. I wanted to be free. I didn't want to be who I was anymore. I didn't like that person. You know, I was sad. I was depressed. I wasn't really sure who I was. I was doing things that I would find out later, were out of my character because I wanted to belong so bad. And I just wanted to be wanted so bad that I was doing things that just weren't me. And I wanted to know who I was. So I felt like eventually, after going through lots of things and doing lots of things, I figured out, okay, let me try this church thing out. Let's really get into this thing and really, you know, get into it and figure it out. And I started being serious about church and really going to church and interacting with church folk and all of that stuff. And while there are amazing people, let's be very clear, I can wholeheartedly say I would not be the woman that I am without church. You take that how you want, good, bad, indifferent about how you feel about me. It is what it is. I would not be the woman that I am without church and without the people that I met through my journeys in churches. I would not be the woman that I am. But with that being said, there have been a lot of things that have happened that hurt me, if I'm being honest. They hurt my feelings. They made me feel away. They made me question what it was I was doing. Why was I here? Why do I put up with this? It makes me think about work. You know, I remember at one point I was working a job that they were basically abusive. They would put you through the ringer, and then if you complained about it, they would get upset. And they would say, well, this person dealt with it, and this person dealt with it, and this person dealt with it. And I remember telling one of my superiors one day, just because she was complaining to me because another one of someone like my peers was not complaining, but they were telling her, like, basically, this isn't right that you do A, B, and C. And she was like, you know, you cool with doing this and this. I said, just because I'm willing to take the abuse does not mean that you should punish someone who isn't willing to take it. I'm a workhorse. Anyone who knows me knows, like, I work. I have no problem with working. It is what it is. But I've learned that people will take full advantage of that about me and will work me to my grave. And guess what? They'll have somebody there to replace me in 2.5 seconds. So I've learned to start pulling back when it comes to that. But I feel like in church, the same thing happens. You know, there are things that happen in church. There are things that go unsaid in church. There are some churches who literally spiritually kill people and they send them back out into the world, or that person leaves and the church takes no accountability for what happened. And it's hurtful to watch. It's traumatic to watch because it feels like, well, what if something happens and that's me? What's going to happen? We just go, you know what I'm saying? The church at the end of the day is supposed to just be physical people coming together in the same physical space, glorifying God. So I know a lot of people who don't go to traditional churches because they've been hurt by church. And as someone who loves church, my mother, is funny, like I said, I didn't grow up in church, but my mother will tell you, I've always liked church. And part of it might be the theatrics of it. I'm a dancer. So part of it might be the theatrics, the singing, the music, all of that. Like, part of it might be that. But when I went to sincere churches, I always felt the spirit there. Like, I always felt the sincerity there. And I want people to just feel that sincerity, that honesty. And a lot of times what happens as humans, flesh, we get in the way and then we jack it up, right? We get in the way and we will like I said, we will, as a church, we will jack people up and then send them out into the world. And then we wonder why people don't want to come to church. Until the church starts being honest about some of the pain that it has caused to people, there will be people who will continuously be in bondage. You know, I'm thankful that I have been in a position where even when the times the church has hurt me, I have known where to go. I've known how to get through it. I've known what to do. I know when it's time for me to leave. I know when it's time to stay. I know when it's time for me to shift. Like, whatever it is, God has really graced me in that place where he has helped me to navigate. He's put key people in positions to help me navigate those emotions and those feelings. And he's done a thing where now when I have friends who just straight up don't like church or don't want to go to church, I can talk them through it. I will never say, this is the church you need to be at. This XYZ, International, Episcopal, AME, Baptist, Seventh-day Adventist, whatever. I will never tell you what church you need to be at. But I will say that you should gather yourself with other believers and make sure that whatever message you are getting is sound. I will say that. I will always say that because it's important. In the world that we live in, the world we live in is crazy. And we are light. We need to make sure our light is sharp. We need to make sure that regardless of what the world is telling us, that we are living the way that we know God wants us to live. And he doesn't create lone rangers. We're created to be in communion with others and to be united with others. And I know that sometimes humans mess it up. Sometimes it's the pastor that messes it up. Sometimes it's just that one stank old lady at the end of your row, because that was mine for a little bit, if I'm being honest. But you got to remember why you're there, whose you are, and your purpose. I go to church because I know that's where God wants me to be. I know that I have growth that I need to do. I know that there is change that needs to take place. And I firmly believe that God will use me as one of those agents of change. Will it happen in my particular church? I don't know. Will it happen just because I use my voice and I speak and I do my best to speak truth to power and whatever power that is? Could be. I don't know. But at the end of the day, I know that in order to change something, you gotta be in it to figure it out. The way that our grandmamas and our grandparents and great-grandparents did church, I don't think that version of church works in 2020. But I do think church is necessary. But in order for church to stay relevant, not stay relevant like God is irrelevant, but in order for church to be what God called it to be, we have to get past religion and get to relationship. Because relationship will cause us to change our perspective, and it will really force us to look at people as opposed to just another person in your pew, another person that's tithing, another person just throw into a ministry because you need somebody to do A, B, or C. Building relationship will cut out a lot of the dramas at churches. In my experience, a lot of the dramas that happens at church, a lot of it boils down to miscommunication and just not knowing what's going on. Like just really thinking one thing is one way and it's really thinking it's A, B and it's really C, D. But we don't want to talk to one another. We just want to assume things about one another. And what happens is when you start having kinks in your armor, you allow the devil in, and so you allow him to spread like a disease. And guess what? Sometimes it ain't the devil. Sometimes it's just you being your evil, crotchety, mean, nasty, unnecessary self. It's you being wrapped up in your flesh. You're intimidated by somebody else's gift. You are full of yourself because you are used to being in this position for so long. And then here someone comes and you look at them as a threat. Or you think they want your spot. Or whatever it is. There are plenty of scenarios I can give you. And that's not the things that I'm saying. I haven't experienced every single one of them. But I've seen them. And it hurts my heart because I see how real people are affected. And there are some people who I know will not step foot in a church. Got them questioning God. I would hate to think that my actions would ever cause someone to question who I say I serve. We gotta humble ourselves, y'all. Like I said, I've been hurt by church, but I've also been saved in a church. God has put people in the same four walls that someone hurt me in. God also put other people in those four walls who helped save me, who helped keep me on track, who has loved me through some of the darkest times of my life, who to this day I call my sisters and I call my mamas and I call my aunties and I call my uncles, people that I know I could call and I could look up to. So yeah, I've been through the whole, I don't know why I'm here, I'm leaving, I'm done, I'm tired, I'm over it, I don't like y'all don't, I've been through it. And let's be clear, I've been on the mild side of been through it. I done seen people who've been through way worse when it comes to church. But I want you to know that you don't have to hold on to that anger. You don't have to let that anger hold you hostage. You can be free. The same God who birthed the idea of the original church is the same God who loves you, who has his hand on you, who doesn't want you to be bound by fear and regret and anger and defeat. That he doesn't want you to be held hostage by what other people did. I'm not going to say that people are unbelievers if they act that way, but what I will say is that maybe they went through something and they didn't know how to properly process what happened to them, so they turned around and became the bully as opposed to being the person like, I would never treat someone that way. Let me make sure I'm doing it the right way. I want us to get to a place where we can be honest about the role that we play in the world being the way it is. We talk a lot about, or I hear a lot about, pastors not being right. And don't get me wrong, there are some trash pastors. But what about you as a lay member? What about that person? Do you speak to the person next to you in the pew? Are you a gossiper? Are you someone who just talks, and not about that action? And I don't mean in like a physical altercation kind of way. I mean maybe I got caught up in talking about you. Let me apologize. I remember at one point, there was a woman in my church that I did not like because she had did something that I didn't like. And as opposed to me going to her and speaking to her about it, I held on to that distaste for her for years. And I was never rude. I was never nasty. None of that. But I'm good, sis. And I never would tell her. And then one day, I just went up to, like, after I heard a sermon, I don't remember what the sermon was, but I went up to her and I apologized. And I told her exactly what my issue was. And I apologized for not being honest about having an issue. Because having that issue could have blocked years of wisdom, years of things that I could have been gaining. Because I was in my feelings and I was in my flesh and I wasn't mature enough. I wasn't mature enough to tell her exactly what my issue was, and I really had to apologize. Now, do I talk to this lady every day now? No. But I needed to get that off of me. If we could get to a place as a church where we start being more honest, I think that will set us free. I think it will be very helpful. So I say all this to say, I am someone who has been hurt by a church, but I will not allow that to stop me from doing what I know God has called me to do. And part of what God has called me to do includes gathering up with other believers and exalting his name and worshiping him and giving him glory. Now, again, the church isn't always the traditional sense of what we think about it, but my prayer is that you find your community, you find your group that really puts you in a position with God that you need to be in. So that's my little spiel. My prayer is that it's helpful. If you want me to get into detail about like what happened and how I was able to get to where I'm at as far as like having peace, and I'm very active in my church. I'm over in ministry, and everything that I don't know if I said this, everything that I talk about, I've talked about it here. All of it hasn't happened to me, but it either happened to me or it happened to people that I love and I care about. And I've seen how cruel people can be. But I also have to remember that God gives us free will. So I cannot blame God. I cannot blame what his original idea of the church was. I can't blame that on his imperfect creatures. I can't blame that on him. I have to put that on his imperfect creatures who I don't know what they've been through to cause them to act the way that they act. And my prayer is that we get more self-reflective and we can start dealing with those things that are unlike God and rip those things out so we can fully operate in the way God has called us to move as a church. Because our job is to go out and we want to draw people in, but my goal is not to draw people in because we need extra people in the seats. We try to get the money in the bank. We try to have more people to just be in ministry to do stuff. No, my goal is because I want you to see how dope and amazing and crazy this God that I serve is, that I want you to fall in love with him the way I have. I never want my actions to be the reason why somebody look at God sideways as one of his servants. I don't. And I think if a lot of us, if we start moving that way and not being wrapped up in our flesh and being wrapped up in our fear, being wrapped up in our resentment, being wrapped up in just all the stuff that's not of him, we will be better. We can operate better and we can affect better in other people. So that's my little spiel. If you want me to give you, like I said, detailed stories, I can. Child, I could. But at the end, I want it to be, I always look at it as a happy ending because, again, some of those things really taught me about grace, having grace for others, being empathetic with people, having sympathy for people, how to really love my neighbor, how to really love Christ, love people how God loves us, or striving to. Right? Like I've really learned a lot about forgiveness and love through some of the things that have happened to me in general, but specifically in church. So I say all that to say, I am actually going to start a series here on my channel where I want you guys to write me and I want you guys to tell me some of the things that have happened to you guys in church. Why don't you go? If you don't go to church, why don't you go to church anymore? Did something happen in church? If you go to church, but you're just going through the motions, you're just going because that's what everyone else is going. Did something happen to get you that way? Because I would love to talk it through. I will never claim to be a Bible scholar. I will never claim to be someone who has all the answers. But I know who is the answer, not to be corny. But I do believe that sometimes getting a different perspective on situations helps you to kind of see whatever. I don't have a problem with calling the church out when it's wrong. I also don't have a problem with saying, can we be a little self-reflective? Can we see A, B, C, da-da-da, and sometimes that helps. I'm never going to try to force anyone to go to church, but just maybe plant the seed to help you maybe get back to where you could be, where you should be. And like I said, church isn't always a traditional big brick building with 1,000 members. It's not always that. Sometimes it's 5 or 10 people coupled together, worshiping the Lord for who he is and what he's done, and just getting some biblically sound teaching. It just is what it is sometimes. So if you want to email me your situation, your letter, if you want to hear my 2 cents about it, what I feel like the Lord's going to tell me, because I am going to pray about it, because I take very seriously what I get on here and say, and I never want to speak out of turn. I never want to say anything that'll have you looking at Jesus like, what she say, Jesus? So if you want to email me, this is my email address, akira@truthandloveunited.com. Shoot me an email. Tell me a story. If I get any emails, I can start it. I don't know if this will be every week I do it, or I might do my regular videos and do those if I get any responses. But I'll read the letter and we can kind of talk it through. Also, we can talk about it in the comments. Tell me in the comments, have y'all ever experienced some of those things where people just jump out the window on you? We have no idea why. Have you ever had some experiences? Just let me know. Am I crazy? Am I tripping? Am I doing the most? I don't know. But you let me know. I don't know if I said this at the beginning. Please make sure you like, share, comment, subscribe. Please share this video, because I really desire for people to be free. Some of his own people who say they've been free, they've been in church 30 some years, but don't like the people they go to church with. They just go because they used to it. Like, what? That's crazy. And these newer generations, they're not playing those games. They just won't go. But I don't want it to become a scenario of, because we're not going to church. And I'm not saying you can't get biblically sound teaching outside of church, because there are some people who don't necessarily go to the traditional idea of church and still, give good word. But I just don't want people to be out here, false prophesying and, false telling all the type of craziness because they haven't heard sound biblical doctrine, because A, B, and C happened to them in church, or happened to somebody they know in church, and now they just can't be bothered. I don't want that. But yeah, let's just talk about it. Just tell me what y'all think. Tell me how y'all feeling. Am I tripping? Am I crazy? Am I onto something? Am I not? Let me know. And I love y'all. I appreciate you for y'all watching this. If you're not following me on social media, you should be. I have things going on over there that you should be paying attention to. So go follow me on Instagram. Check out the website, truthloveandI.com. And like I always say, as long as you're running your race at God's pace, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Bye.
Know that girl can make everything you got.